Yeah, I mean, we're talking real life. We're talking to real people about real things, discussing real problems, coming up with real solutions. This is our life. This is my life. This is real life. Hey, this is Cornelius Lindsay. Welcome to another episode of Real Life. I am so excited about today's particular podcast. Today I'm talking about just not being good enough. Have you ever had those moments in life where you felt like I'm not good enough? As a pastor, I have an opportunity to sit down with many people. And one of the common themes is that they don't feel like they are good enough. They may not be good enough for the job. They may not be good enough to be in the relationship. They may not feel good enough to run for political office. They don't feel good enough to be able to apply for the position. In many different cases of life, we may feel like we're not good enough for something. Maybe God wanted me to do it, but maybe I'm not good enough to do it. And today I want to talk about what it means to not feel good enough, and hopefully provide you with some real life solutions that can help you out in whatever situation you may find yourself. In my book, Decoding the Silent Man's Language, I actually talk about something that I want to actually present to you now in this podcast. Particularly speaking, I want to read to you three of the paragraphs that are found in my book, Decoding the Silent Man's Language. And the subtitle of the book is, discovering what men are saying when they aren't saying anything. And the whole idea of the book is allowing for women. I wrote the book for women, but it's also written by a man so men can understand it. But nevertheless, I write the book so that people can be able to understand what these strong, silent men, what they're actually saying. And the whole idea of the book is to show people that the age-old saying that your actions speak louder than words, and that's true. And if you look at a person's actions, you can really see what they're saying. Because a lot of times our mouth can speak the lie, but our lives can really tell the truth. But I want to read to you these three particular paragraphs before I kind of go on. It says, men are usually expected to perform at all times. Men are expected to be strong at all times, show no emotion, communicate effectively, fix everything, protect everyone, and so much more. To live up to these lofty and unfair expectations, men begin to identify their value with academic degrees, money, public acclaim, and much more. But how would you react if I told you men get tired from the heavy load of responsibility we carry on our backs? How would you feel knowing that we get lonely and resentful because of the weight of other people's expectations of them? We struggle at articulating our feelings because we have lost confidence in our words, and many of us lack the ability to share what is in our hearts. We grow tired from being the rock for everyone else. We desire to lean on a tangible rock while having faith that the cornerstone will not fail us. It says, whose shoulder do we turn to and cry on? Where is the safe place to share our hearts, our insecurities, and our ailments? Then the last particular chapter I'm going to read, it says, many say men play games. Unfortunately, society emphasizes the need for the boy to perform. Men have learned from watching and playing games throughout his life. He's learned that he must keep score, and the more points scored, the bigger the win. For many men, it is not just a game. It is a report card. It is a report that follows the guidelines. The greater the performance, the more sexual partners, the more money that you have, etc. Then the higher the grade. Society rewards these men based on their performance more than the content of their character. If men were rewarded on earth based on their character alone, many bank accounts would be empty and award shelves would be bare. This is why we cannot expect a perverse player to play a clean game. Now, I'm talking about what it means not to be good enough. And I read three different paragraphs there, and the first two are really linked together. And it's really talking about, now this particular chapter is the chapter title is On the Backs of Men. And in this chapter, I seek to explain to the reader that there are many different things, many different ideas, many different things that we've just kind of taken on throughout our lives. They just kind of sits on our back. It's all these different responsibilities and things that we've now become responsible for that God didn't even make us responsible for. Or it could be it could be some of society's rules, some of their norms, some of these traditions that we've just kind of kept going on. We've just kind of lived through them, but we're taking them on as our own, not because we really understand them, not because we really understand the purpose within them, but we take them on because we saw mama do it, or we saw daddy do it, or we once heard that men should just be strong and not show emotion, or you just heard that, maybe you run like a girl, and maybe you think that girls are slower than everybody else, or maybe you grew up with the idea that, maybe you can't be everything God has called you to be because, you didn't grow up in the best community. Maybe you didn't grow up with a silver spoon in your mouth, or meaning that you had a lot of money. Maybe you had to go into college. You had to go and get you a loan for all of your college because you couldn't afford it. You didn't have parents that were able to just buy for you whatever you wanted. You had to take the bus. You had to Uber your way around. We have all these different standards in life that kind of qualifies us, if you will, for the value that we think that we have, or that we think we have in what we have. And the first two chapters talks about how we lose the confidence in who we are because we don't necessarily live up to the standards that society has for us. Then the last particular paragraph I read, it talks about this point system that we've been pretty much raised in all of our lives. And then all of a sudden society kind of tells you, well, you know what, you don't necessarily have to believe in the point system. But in many ways, it still perpetuates this idea of a point system. Let me explain. If you're an athlete, I wasn't an athlete, but I was still involved in the points because you kind of learn the points. I mean, even when you're in grade school, you're receiving points. You got, I don't know if they do it now. I've been out of school so long, but I know when I was going to school, you received a point, certain point on for your test. So you may have scored an 89 where somebody else scored a 99. And so now you begin to compare and judge yourself by the person who did a 99 and thinking that the 10-point margin means that you're not good enough. Maybe you feel like I'm not the smartest person because you scored 20 points behind the highest score. Or maybe the person that you're competing against, they scored 30 points ahead of you. So you don't feel like maybe you're not smart enough to be in this class. Maybe you feel like you need to drop the course, or maybe you feel like, maybe I'm not smart enough to have this particular major, or to go with this degree, or to even climb that corporate ladder because I can't speak as eloquently as somebody else can. I don't know all the words that other people know. I don't know all the things. I don't know all the rules. I don't know all the jargon. I'm just not good enough. And you use this point system. While you're in grade school, while we're growing up, we begin to see, you play basketball, you play football, and in any type of sport, you have soccer, lacrosse, you name it. There's a point system, and whoever scores the most points win the game. Now, we just got finished with an NBA championship, and the whole idea around it was that the winning team is the one who scores the most points. Now, whether you get that through fouls, whether you get that through 3 points, whether you get that through, layup, wherever you get it from, the whole idea is that you legally score points. And throughout life, that same idea, that same ideology, that same mentality carries over into how we begin to form our values. So we say, well, maybe I'm not valuable because I don't have enough points. Because throughout life, when you played football, then it was all about scoring the right amount of points. It was all about, rushing with getting the most yards. It was all about, making sure you got the most tackles. It was all about having great stats so that people can pay attention to you, that you can be better. And you can hear people all the time saying, yeah, but you're just competing against yourself. No, that's not always the case. The big issue here is that you are definitely competing against somebody, and in most cases, you're competing against those people who are around you. So now we have this whole ideology, this whole concept in our head that we're just trying to get more points, and that's all we're trying to do. I just want to get more points, more points, more points, more points. And with more points, it usually comes greater frustration because you assume that I have all these points and now I should be of greater value. But then you learn something, that the points, they can't fulfill you. You learn that you can't get fulfillment in that. You learn that, no matter how many points you think you have, you'll always meet somebody who just has more points than you do. And you look at that and you think, well, I'm still not fulfilled. I still don't feel happy. I still don't feel like I have purpose. Because just because I have a lot of points does not mean that I still feel valuable. I'm still trying to grade my value off of my points. So this is what happens. Instead of you going to get more points in football and basketball, or making sure that you have, numbers in your little black book of, the opposite sex, then what happens is you run out and you say, well, you know what? My point system is no longer going to be what I can score on the court or what I can do on the field. But now my point system is the number, how much money I can make on my job. So because I don't even barely, make 5 figures, and I meet somebody who makes 6 or 7 figures, you look at that and you think, man, maybe I'm not winning at this game called life. And you look at the points that you have accumulated. Maybe you'll say, you know what, I don't have a doctorate degree, but I have a master's degree. But in the scheme of things, in the competitive world we live in, maybe you look at that and you'll think that person with a PhD, that doctorate, you know what, they have more points than I do. So maybe they may be better at this than I am. When the idea that we should all just come to is that, you know what, God has called you for something, and that he does not value based on the points that you can accumulate throughout life. And we assume that maybe I'm not good enough. Maybe I'm not good enough, Cornelius, to be in the relationship. I know what that's like. I know what that's like to feel like maybe I'm not good enough to be in this particular relationship. I felt like that. Even in my marriage now, I didn't feel like I was a good enough man to be with my wife. And that's like real stuff. And I know men who still deal with it. I even know women who deal with the idea that maybe you just want to be a good enough woman to be a mother. Maybe you want to be a good enough woman to be a wife. I know I felt like that. Maybe I want to be a good enough man to be a father to my children. Will I be good enough? Am I enough to be a husband to my wife? And while we're constantly told by others, especially in our church setting, which we should be, and edified in this sense, that you know what, God has made us enough, and God is enough, and his grace is still sufficient, and his mercy is new. Even though we know those things, it's still that little nagging feeling in the back of our heads that says, why bother? You're not enough. I mean, why continue? You're not going to win. I mean, why keep going? You're not going to have what you want. I mean, why don't you just stop now? Why don't you just give up? Why don't you just call it quits? I mean, probably the best thing for you to do is just to lay down on your back, because that's all that you're good for. The ideas pop into our heads that, you know what, maybe I'm not valuable. When God is saying, you know what? I thought that you were so valuable that I redeemed you with myself. I believe that you were so valuable that I was willing to pay the highest price for your freedom. And you're trying to value yourself by points? You're trying to grade how good you are based on everything that you've done? I mean, I know the scripture says that no man is good, and I understand that. And this is not the basis by which I draw this podcast. But I want you to just think. I just want you to think for a second. I mean, even if where you are, you may be driving. I don't want you driving and closing your eyes. But if you're listening to this somewhere and you're in a safe place, I want you to close your eyes for just a second. I want you to envision something. I want you to envision yourself not having to take on the points of this world, not constantly being graded by the things that you've done, but finally looking and saying, you know what, this is who I am, and this is who God has made me to be. And I am not what I think I am. I'm not what other people think I am, but I am who God says that I am. And if you don't know who God says that you are, the best place for you to start is right there in the scriptures, for you to read to see exactly how much he loves you. I mean, it is love that draws us towards him. It took me to realize and have a revelation of God's love, to know his love for me, to know how much he cares for me. It was his love that drew me towards him. And it's that love that will continuously draw you towards him. I guarantee you that. But if you continue going through life, consistently grading yourself on the type of job you have, the money that you don't have or the money that you do have, the type of spouse that you have versus the type of spouse that somebody else has, judging your marriage, judging your relationship with your children. Or, you may say, well, I have children out of wedlock and now I don't feel like I'm good enough to be able to do this. And maybe God didn't want to use me, Cornelius, because I'm a single parent. And I didn't do everything the right way. And everybody else seems like they have it all together. And I just don't. And I have all these other ideas and all these other things in my head that makes me feel like I'm not good enough. And I'm telling you in this moment to finally put that to rest. Bury it. because those things, they're all lies. That's just another standard that you picked up from the world in order to gain and garner some type of value. And I'm telling you, your value is not found in the points that you're able to accumulate throughout life. Your value is firmly rooted and grounded in Jesus Christ. And that is the reality that you must know. That's the reality that you must believe in. Not these other things that tries to paint some kind of picture of who you are based on what you've done or what you have not done. You finally have to settle that for yourself. I guarantee you, if you're still contemplating that you're not good enough, then chances are that you're living by fear. And fear gives birth to inactivity. And it could be that you're not doing anything, not because you just don't think that you're not good enough, but you're doing things because you're fearful that if you were to actually do something, that you know what, you might fail. And throughout my life, in my opinion, I've probably done more wrong than I've ever done good. In my life, throughout all the businesses that my wife and we've started, I feel like I've failed a whole lot more than what I've succeeded. But can I tell you something? That throughout all those things, I've learned so many valuable truths. Truths that could only be expressed in the reality of knowing who I am in Jesus Christ. And that's what you must know. So settle it today. You are who you are through and by Jesus Christ. So when you have these ideas that you're not good enough, I just want you to go ahead and speak back to yourself and say, you know what? By God's grace, I am just enough for him. And if he is enough for me, then I know that I can do whatever he calls for me to do. Man, I love you. God bless you. Thank you so much for listening to this podcast. I pray that you would share this with your family, share it with your friends, share it with your coworkers. Just go ahead and blast it out. Just tell everybody that you know you have to download this. Also, make sure that you download the app through the Apple Store. Make sure that you download this through the Google Play Store, whatever it may be. And also visit me on my website, corneliuslindsay.com. God bless you. Thank you so much, and I can't wait to join you again. Thank you so much for tuning in to Real Life with Cornelius Lindsay. Hey, if you get an opportunity, please check out my website, www.corneliuslindsay.com. Until next time, remember, Jesus is Lord. God bless you.